The train shouldered across the prairie like a stubborn animal, its steel ribs humming, its windows collecting dust that turned the evening light the color of worn brass. Maren Ellsworth watched her reflection quiver in the glass between streaks of grit and thought, not for the first time, that she looked like the sort of woman no story paused to describe. Her mouth was neither lush nor thin. Her cheekbones did not cast elegant shadows. Her eyes were a steady grey that people called practical before they glanced past her. When the conductor called, "Ash Flat! Next stop, Ash Flat!" she folded the letter that had set this whole course and slid it back beneath the bone buttons of her travelling bodice. The paper had gone soft with rereading. Silas Brigg, the man whose ad she'd answered and whose careful, looping script had become the rope she held to cross out of her old life, had written of a ranch and a partnership, of needing someone to keep books and keep house, of a woman willing to build her days out of honest work rather than fashion or fuss. He had called himself plain as a fence post and said he hoped, if Providence was kind, to meet a woman who didn't mind the same. He had signed, "Yours in Hope, S. Brigg." Maren had carried the letter against her heart through 2 rail lines, a stage, and the rattling day coach whose hard benches still sang in her bones. She propped her valise beside her boots and let her fingers find the tiny ridge of a scar at her wrist, remembered the sewing needle that slipped at the dress shop back in Huron. "Don't bleed on the silk, Ellsworth," Mrs. Dawberry had snapped, as if blood were insolence. Maren had saved for 2 years to buy herself out of that shop's airless rooms, its work tables deep as coffins. The advertisement had come to her like a window thrown open. She had written to Silas under the faint gaslight of the boarding house, table shaping each word with care. He had written back in a tone so sober she trusted it more than any vow. No poetry, no promises of the moon, only lists. A house that needed mending, books that needed straightening, a chapel 5 miles ride. On a Sunday, a windmill that shrieked when it turned. It felt like truth. Ash Flat drew itself up around the track more like a camp than a town, built in a hurry, then set to waiting. The platform was a long groove of boards with a telegraph office hunched like a box at one end. Beyond it, a main street in sloping dust. A livery, a mercantile with red-painted letters that had been ambitious once and now had sun-peeled corners like old lips. A hotel whose porch was a stage for men with their boots hooked low on railings. The kind of place where a person was noticed, not for what she was, but for the fact that she had arrived. Miss Ellsworth. The name moved toward her on a voice that contained no question, only a conclusion. The man wearing it was standing at the foot of the passenger car stairs when she stepped down. He was tall in the way of men who have learned to use height as room, not as threat. His hat brim cut the light, shadowing eyes that were more blue than grey, and the beard he wore was trimmed close enough to look tidy without forgetting it was a beard. His coat was plain. His boots were dusted honest. "I'm Rowan Hale," he said. "Mr. Brigg asked me to collect you." Collect, she thought, like a parcel. She made herself straighten her shoulders anyway. "You have my thanks, Mr. Hale." He did not reach for her valise, a small mercy, and he did not look at her longer than courtesy demanded. "Silas is at the yard," he said. "Bought a new cultivator last week. The tongs are bent to the devil and back. He's been trying to get replacement parts before the fair stock rolls out tomorrow." She nodded, as if she knew what a cultivator's tongs were supposed to be when they weren't bent. "I can meet him there." "There's time," Rowan said. "He expects you at sundown. If you've a mind to wash off the travel, Mrs. Coyle keeps rooms at the boarding house on Pecan. I'm headed that way for feed." The impulse to say, "I do not need washing," was pride, not fact, and pride had not yet built her a life. "Mrs. Coyle would be welcome," she said. Rowan touched his hat brim, a gesture so work-worn it didn't feel like ceremony. "This way." They walked a block. In a slow tide of dust, He matched her pace without offering his arm. Men on the porch of the hotel watched them pass with that frank, unkind curiosity people use when they believe themselves safe from consequence. Maren kept her chin level, her valise steady at her side. Rowan said nothing. When he stopped, it was before a pale, clapboard house with a cross-hatched fence and a yard planted in petunias that had seen better days. A sign hung from the eave on a leather strap. Coyle Rooms. Mrs. Coyle herself appeared before Rowan had finished knocking, her apron already in her hand to worry. "Mr. Hale," she said, "I expected you on the noon run for hay." "Afternoon." "Train ran late," he said. "Mrs. Coyle, this is Miss Ellsworth." Mrs. Coyle's eyes took Maren in, one sweep, and Maren braced herself to be summed like yardage, but Mrs. Coyle's mouth softened. "Come in, child. The basin's clean and the kettle's been on since 1. Mr. Hale, your feed will keep, and if it doesn't, your horses have eaten worse." "They have," he agreed. "I'll come back at past to see Miss Ellsworth to the yard." "See her to the yard?" Mrs. Coyle scoffed after he'd gone. "As if she were a calf. Don't mind me. I'm all opinion." "I don't mind you," Maren said. The truth was, she minded almost everything.